Now he's thinking about me every night. Oh, is it that sweet? I guess so. Say you can't sleep, baby, I know. Does that mean it's the soul? Move it up, down, left, right, oh.
Hi Dance Magazine readers, welcome back to Dance Magazine's YouTube channel. My name is Haley Hilton and this is Dancer Diary, where I'm chronicling my life as a dancer in New York City. Today we're talking about rehearsal etiquette. Get ready with me while I tell you all about why this subject's been on my mind lately and the expert advice I got that helped me kind of navigate it. To start, I had my New York performance debut, which I'm so happy about. It was wonderful. It was with Broadway Cares. They did a show called Hats Off to You at the end of April, and it was at the Hard Rock Cafe. And I was invited to do the show by Jasperson. He is original cast of Hamilton. He's still in Hamilton. He just had his 3,000th show. By the time this come out, it will have gone up exponentially, but he is amazing. So he invited me to be in this show. There were so many talented performers from so many different shows, and it was just this awesome production with a lot of talent. It was so fun. Dream come true, getting to finally be on stage in an ensemble again. Because I've performed since coming back, but typically by myself. I haven't done ensemble work yet, and so it felt like kind of foreign coming back into a rehearsal space. It felt like coming home, but also I felt like I had some questions. So my experience has been, training growing up with my teachers in rehearsal, and that is like a great training ground. But then I only had one season of dancing professionally in a company before I got sick. And so my experience with that choreographer performer dynamic that's different from the teacher-student hierarchy was limited. And then I've come back, and I've been in class, and that's been great, but again, it's a different structure. And so when I came into that first rehearsal, I had a few questions come up, and I realized, I kind of thought like, oh, if you're an adult, you're trying to have good manners and you're a strong dancer, like that's really all you need. But I realized questions kept popping up like, oh, is it inappropriate to ask a question in this setting or not? It was just this whole list of things that came to mind that I'm like, oh, I bet a lot of professionals have these questions. Being a talented dancer with good manners, whoa, I think will get you far, but we all want to really thrive. So what are some things we can do to really thrive? So to answer some of these questions, I got on the phone with choreographer Galen Hooks to get some insight. Galen has this dance training method called Galen Hooks method, and she said that part of why she wanted to start this program is because she had dancers who were wanting help booking jobs, and they were asking for her advice, and she's obviously had this star-studded career, and then she's a choreographer herself, so she was helping people succeed in their auditions. And then she found that once they were succeeding in auditions, people were coming back to her and being like, okay, I booked the job, now what? How do I succeed once I'm on the job? And so she had all this advice. So I knew when I had these questions come up, Galen was the perfect person to talk to. She's spending so much of her life already passing this knowledge onto artists. And here's what she had to say. So first, I asked her when's an appropriate time to ask questions. I was thinking like, oh, there'll be like a set time in a rehearsal, or like when things get quiet or whatever. But her answer surprised me. The answer is actually like, don't really ask questions. Ask as few questions as possible. She says, do everything in your power to answer the questions on your own. She says that almost everything can be figured out by just observing the choreographer and their assistants. And she said, and then if you're a little bit concerned, like, is this not quite right? And you're struggling from just observing, she said, trust that the choreographer or the assistant will reach out if you're not doing something right. She says, if you're not getting a correction from the choreographer, just keep doing what you're doing. If they aren't giving a no, it means they aren't seeing it as a problem. And she said, if I have been really clear while setting choreography, because Galen is obviously one of those choreographers who's quite detailed, and she's not messing around when she's given her choreography. She's telling you exactly what she wants. And so she says, if I've been clear on what I want and someone asks me a question, like that's almost worse. She's saying like, she's been clear, you should be able to, we're professionals, we should be able to learn by just observing. She said, if you just look at your fellow dancers, you can see that something's on count 3 and not count 4. And, if though you come to a point where like you you really need to talk to someone. She said, if you have a friend in the room who is, you know, one of those really on the ball people that you can trust and count on, you know, quietly find a time during a break or whatever to like clarify, but mostly it should come from our own eyes. So pressure. The second day that I went back to rehearsal for this show that I was doing, I kept that in mind, you know. I like was thinking, you know, don't ask the question, watch for it. And she was right. Basically every question that was in my mind, even if like maybe something didn't, I missed it somehow or whatever, if I watched the choreographer, if I watched Thane, I got it eventually. My next question was, should you ever give input? This dynamic is different. This is less like hierarchical, and some rooms can be more collaborative. Like, should you be giving input if you see something that could help the choreographer navigate something that's not working? And she basically said no. She said, if you are, you know, most choreographers are going to have an assistant in the room, and that's their job to give input if something's not working. So you basically should sit quietly and wait for direction. And she said, you know, it's your job as the professional to bring whatever they want to life. So if like a formation isn't working or something's not happening, do everything in your power to make it work, rather than giving solutions for solving it, because, you know, they came in with an eye for what they want. Which I also thought was really interesting. But she said the one exception to that is for featured dancers who have, you know, they're a featured dancer, they have this different relationship with the choreographer. She says it can show confidence if, you know, they give a couple of options. So she said, you might say, would you like option A or option B, where I finish with a wink? And kind of levels up the choreography without stepping on toes. But not every choreographer is gonna like that. Like, I would feel nervous coming in with input like that. And she said, it can show confidence to ask those questions, but it can also show confidence if you're in a featured role and you have that kind of relationship with the choreographer, to ask from the jump. Go in and say like, hey, you know, would you like me to give you ideas, or simply just do exactly what you're saying? And she said some choreographers will say, no, thank you, I'm very specific in what I want. And then others might say like, yeah, actually, that'd be great. Feel free to give input. And so asking up front so that you're not wondering the whole time, like, should I give input? Should I not? Do they want this? Do they not? Just ask. Get it out of the way. Find out before you start to panic. The next advice she had for thriving in a rehearsal setting is to stay out of your head, which I am really good at getting in my head. So this was a good reminder to me. She said there were two ways that it's important to stay out of your head. She says your job is to think, how can I help give the choreographer what they need? You know, if you get corrections or you get yelled at, it can be tempting to like shrivel up and kind of fall into yourself. But she said, just say thank you for the note, and then figure out how you can take that note and give them what they're looking for. Don't withdraw. Don't take it as a personal attack. They just need the job to get done, and you can help them get it done. You were hired for a reason. You're in this position for a reason. You're a professional. You're already trained. You're ready to go. Just rise to the occasion, which I think is like easier said than done sometimes, but I believe in all of us. We can do this. The next thing she said to keep in mind is that the performer-choreographer dynamic is very different than the teacher-student hierarchy. I think if you haven't booked in a long time, so you've mostly been in class lately, or if you were sick like me, or you took some time off of pregnancy, or maybe you're 18 right out of, you know, studio and you're coming into this, that's like helpful to understand, like, this isn't that same dynamic, but it's a kind of adds more pressure. What she said is, it's not the same dynamic, and in fact, like, a teacher is there to help you grow and learn and get you to the next level, and that's what class is about. But as a performer, you are there to come with a complete tool belt to give them what they're asking for. The last piece of advice that Galen had was to come to rehearsal camera ready, which is something I had not thought about, but she says she likes when dancers do this because a lot of times the artist will come into the room, or like a camera might come into the room, or the director will come into the room. Anyway, that's just something to keep in mind so that you're ready for anything. Okay, so yeah, those are all of Galen Hooks' awesome pointers for how to succeed in a rehearsal. You have good rehearsal etiquette. I think something to keep in mind is that, as we mentioned earlier, every choreographer is different. Every choreographer is going to have a different perspective or a different expectation, and I think that these are a good set of guardrails to start out with. And then I think get to know your choreographer and their personality and their approach to rehearsal to see if maybe they want something a little different. For example, I sat down with Thane and asked him these same questions that I asked Galen, and while a lot of his answers were similar, a chunk of them were different. For example, when it comes to asking questions in class, he also appreciates patience from the dancers as they hold off. His reasoning for holding off was that it can kind of break a creative flow. He said that while he was doing Hamilton with Andy Blankenbuehler, in the creation process, Andy would start moving and they'd kind of just follow him, and Thane would start to think like, oh, he got this timing in his body, he understood the movement, and then the movement would shift because Andy was still figuring out exactly what he wanted. And so it wouldn't have been productive for him to say, hey, is it on count this or that? Is this what you want? Is that what you want? Because the choreographer might not know yet what they want. And so he says it's good to wait until everything is settled before asking, and then even at that point, a lot of times choreography will be settled and then the choreographer will immediately jump into the next thing. And he says if the focus has shifted onto something new, it's not a good time to ask questions because, again, they might be in a creative flow. So stay where their mind is at. But Thane says he understands that dancers, he's asked, you know, he's telling us that it's really helpful to be patient as a dancer, but he also understands that it's helpful to be patient as a choreographer. So he tries to recognize the ways that everyone learns differently and picks up choreography differently. And he says that, you know, there's good times where he's comfortable with people asking questions, like after you've stopped, like something has settled and before you've gone on to the next thing, that's a good time. Or maybe if you come back to something a couple hours later or the next day, that could be a good time to say, okay, so you wanted this at this count, right? To clarify some things. But yes, he recommends patience with questions as well. He gave some other pointers for thriving in this setting that I really liked. He talked about like remembering you were asked to be there for a reason, and the choreographer put their trust in you because they believe in you. And if you have that perspective going in, that can be really helpful. He also says that in a professional setting, you know, the choreographer can be your friend. He says a lot of settings that he's been in, they try to create a friendly dynamic where you're like, you know, it's a camaraderie that you're trying to create something together. And as you build that friendship, you start to understand the, you know, the moods, the personality, the preferences of the choreographer, and then you can better give them what they're looking for, and you kind of catch the vision and the vibe, and you're able to be more productive that way. So become friends. If you know, not every choreographer likes that. He does caveat that, which is the theme of the day. But if that's the vibe you're getting from the choreographer, like, you're an adult, be comrades. In terms of giving input, Thane feels slightly differently. Like, obviously he says, again, read the room of the choreographer, but for him personally, there was one moment during Hats Off to You where changes were made to the music of the show within the last 30 minutes of the last rehearsal. So it was a really stressful situation that, you know, can happen in a lot of settings. And in response, the dancers, we all kind of came together and pitched some timing ideas to Thane as he was working stuff out. And he said that that was really helpful to him, that he recognized like we were in the same place as him mentally. We understood him as a choreographer, and so we knew that it was a safe and appropriate time to start throwing things out. And then he was able to take that information and take what he liked, what he didn't, make adjustments that fit with him, and he felt like that was a great time to give feedback. He said that while he was doing Finding Neverland with Mia Michaels, there was one day where she came in, and as they were working through some details, he said she came in and she didn't know what she was feeling, and she wasn't sure what she wanted in that moment, and it was a lot of exploration of her saying, okay, I'm feeling this but not that. It's something where you could ask questions because she was in a place of wondering. And I think a lot of knowing if you should give input or ask questions is about reading the room and then trying to be respectful and show that you care about what is happening. He gave some other pointers for thriving in this setting that I really liked. He talked about like remembering you we're asked to be there for a reason, and the choreographer put their trust in you because they believe in you. And if you have that perspective going in, that can be really helpful. He also says that in a professional setting, you know, the choreographer can be your friend. He says a lot of settings that he's been in, they try to create a friendly dynamic where you're like, you know, it's a camaraderie that you're trying to create something together. And as you build that friendship, you start to understand the, you know, the moods, the personality, the preferences of the choreographer, and then you can better give them what they're looking for, and you kind of catch the vision and the vibe, and you're able to be more productive that way. So become friends. If you know, not every choreographer likes that. He does caveat that, which is the theme of the day. But if that's the vibe you're getting from the choreographer, like, you're an adult. Be comrades. The last thing Thane said before I sign off that I really appreciated is he was talking about being respectful. And obviously that's something that I think we think like, oh, all professionals know that. That's advice that you kind of give kids. But I also think sometimes as dancers get older and they work more, they can kind of develop egos or just kind of get forgetful or complacent. I think it's a good reminder that in every rehearsal setting we are adding to our reputation in either a positive or a less positive way. He says that he's been in professional settings either as a choreographer or as like a fellow performer in which dancers have had kind of eye roll moments, and he's like, you can see it. It's very obvious. And if someone does something like that or doesn't act respectfully, he as a choreographer is not inclined to want to work with them again. He has Broadway aspirations as a choreographer, and if there's someone that he's worked with before who is wonderful to work with, he's gonna do his best to make sure that they come in, he brings them in. Whereas he might not push for that if someone hasn't been good to work with, and so that's good to keep in mind. So yeah, thanks for coming and watching. It means the world to me. I'm so glad that I get to share my experiences with all of you. I'm so happy that I had my New York performance debut and that I'm getting to live my dream and be in these spaces and asking these questions of experts and sharing them with all of you. It's just the happiest time. Anyway, come back next month to see what we have happening, and yeah, love you guys. Mwah.